All right, folks. Hey, everyone. Sorry I'm a little bit late starting. Really sorry about that. Let me know if you can hear, and if you can, great. Looks like everything is in order. I'll say hi to folks, and we'll get started, I think, right away. This is going to be a very lessony one today, and we're just going to cover a little bit. And yeah, so anyway, we'll just get kind of into it. Before we do, I just want to mention I'm going to be running a blues transformation workshop. It's 30 days, and this is meant for players of all levels. Well, maybe not super advanced level, obviously. I'm not going to teach Robin Ford anything, but for players of most levels, let's say, put it that way, beginner, I would say late beginner through intermediate. And it's for 30 days to really transform your blues. There's a wait list in the description. You can get on. It's just to be notified about things. There's a wait list in the video description that you can click on. No cost or obligation or anything. It's just a list. That's it. And when I have it, what it is it's two things. There's videos, yes. And there's exercises and materials and tabs and all that kind of stuff. But then if you want to opt in, there's a workshop component on it where I meet with you, and I meet with others as well, but I meet with you one-on-one and we discuss a plan for you and all of that. And then I follow up as well. So there's a lot of personal attention. I give you lots of feedback on anything that you submit during the 30 days and even before and after. So that's a limited space. Anyway. 2 parts to it. Either one or both is good. All right. Hey, everybody. Let me say hi to folks. Before I do, I have some rather shocking and sad news. For me, at least, one of the people who used to be on all the time. Now this is 2, but Chris Stieghorst was on all the time. She was just known as Chris. She was on. She would stay the whole thing. And she was a really great person, real special person. And I just found out she died. And she died in an accident. She died in a car crash, and it's just horrible. And if you knew Chris, she had a really big heart, and just great. And so I am playing with the blues today. I really feel it. She was a big supporter of mine, and I'll miss her just from that standpoint, but she has children, and she was a new grandparent, and worked part-time as a nurse. Yeah, it's so sad. It's so sad. And I was wondering why she didn't show up. I got an email that said, it was from her email, it said her mother died, but it ended up being, it was from her child who sent it. Anyway. Let's get some blues. So today we're going to be talking about blues rhythm, and let's just start out with the blues rhythm that the way I like to think about this, and I'll just kind of talk, and hopefully you can hear this, and I'll demo. We'll do the lesson right away. Let's just put it on this so that we have. Come on, there we go. So the way I like to think about this is, we learned, yeah, I know, AZDH, it was really so shocking, so shocking. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, dear Prudence, thanks for being on, yeah. Anyway, let's talk a little bit of the blues. And so when I think of the blues, when I first learned how to play the blues, and we'll do this in G, right? So the blues in G would be 3 chords. G, C, and D. And usually when we think of the blues, at least I thought of 2 things. One is that all those chords are 7th chords, dominant 7ths. so we play a G7 and a C7 and a D7. And the other thing I learned was that it was this boogie sort of thing. So we're going to talk about some things that we can go beyond this. So the first thing I want to note is that, the blues is really not, if you listen to blues players, you don't hear them going, you don't hear them playing those strumming or strumming patterns and things like that you do, like in rock, you hear sort of strumming. So instead of that, the most basic blues that we have, or the most basic blues that I remember, is the sort of Jimmy Reed blues, where you're playing this 5 chord, right? There's a power chord. So I'm just playing the G here and the D here. And I learned it like that by stretching my pinky, but there are easier ways to do that. There's a way to do it like this, by using your middle finger. And there's also the way of like using this position. And I appreciate this way more and more as I get older, because my hands don't stretch the way that they used to. But anyway, that's sort of the basics, right? So when we do this, and a lot of times we learn it in the key of E, so we can do those different things, right? But there's a lot to say for just getting that basic blues down, knowing when to play loud, when to play soft, and so forth. And of course, we can then play that was for the G. For the C, we just kind of move down one string. And then back to the G. And then for the Hey Itzik, for the D, we play this form, the A form, right? And all these things get easier as you move up the fretboard, because the frets are spaced a little bit closer. So this gets a little bit easier as you get up the fretboard. But then, and then back to G, right? And then there's usually a turnaround. And that turnaround just means we're going to that 5 chord before we go back to the 1 chord, right? Yeah, the 6-finger stretch, it's really hard, and and we'll talk about that in just a second. But the turnaround is usually something like this, right? We go from the 4, 4 sharp, and then the 5. So we're going to talk about how we can use that basic blues and just come up with lots of other things to do, and what are the things that we need to do to get there. So that's what we're going to start out. We're going to start with that basic blues shuffle, right? However you want to play it. And let me just, for the people who are commenting on, hey, it hurts my hand, I want to make sure you get this. So here, instead of playing it with your first finger and second finger, or first finger and third finger, what I do is I play it with my second finger and my pinky, and then I grab this one right here. I grab the 6 right here, the E here on the D string. It takes some practice, and you have to mute a little bit, but it's so, your hand does not hurt when you do it. So Amos, I would say, do this other one, try this other one. This really works well for people with small hands and for people with arthritis and things like that. I do not ascribe to the, personally, I do not ascribe to the no pain, no gain school of guitar. If you're having pain, stop. Don't try and push yourself to do it. Yeah, it's okay to work on it a little bit over time. You know, that kind of thing, work on it a little bit over time. But this method, and you talk to I learned this from a pro in Nashville, actually. So, you know, he knew all about it. And he said, you know, you got these things where you're playing all night, you're playing these boogies, you can't stretch all night, you're going to kill your hands. So you just have to find another way to do it, and this is a better way to do it. So anyway, if you haven't experienced that, however you want to do these stretches or whatever, that's good. Whether you want to stretch or whether you want to play it this way. Okay, so we're going to start out with that basic boogie, and we'll say, well, what else can we do to do this, to modify? And so let's just talk about a few ways that we can do to modify. The first thing that comes to mind is to add a little lick at the end. And so the most obvious licks are, we've got a G here, and we've got another G here. So we can play a lick to get to the G, like something like this. So let's try something like that. So all I'm doing is I'm using this little lick at the end to make a little bit more interesting. Okay, and we can do that for every chord. It's the same lick, basically. See, there's a C, and there's another C. So we're going from the C to that. And we don't have to do it perfectly. We could go to that. We could use any note that we want to that fits in with the harmony. Yes. So that's a great question, Guitar Guy ATX. The engine of the blues, okay, is these eighth notes. It's not 16th notes, and it's downstrokes. So it's all, let me move back a little bit so you can see my right hand. Okay, so it's all downstrokes. Yes, that's what you want to kind of get. Okay, so that uses those low notes. And there's another thing that you can do, and it's again one of these jumping the octaves sorts of things. You can play single notes in a scale, right? So if you want to play G minor pentatonic, for example, that's kind of common, Chicago blues theme, right? You know, that kind of stuff. And you can do it in place as well. So that's another thing. You can play those single notes. So we've already gone from this to something that's a little more interesting. Okay, so that's that. So let me show you a few other things that you can do. What happens if you're playing something that's a little bit more sort of a little more up-tempo, or a little bit more with where you don't want to play as much? You have a singer that's coming in and playing these. You know, it takes a lot of space sonically. What happens if you have more people up on stage? You want to do something a little bit more interesting or what have you. Well, you can start playing more sparsely. For example, instead of playing, you can play something like this. So all I'm doing there is obviously I'm not strumming still. I'm not playing stuff like that. But what I'm doing is I'm playing kind of like horn stabs. So that's one of the things. So let me just talk about some of these voicings that are going to be different as well, because we'll get to this in a second. And this almost gives you endless possibilities, and I'll just show you a few of them that I've used that you can steal shamelessly. Okay. First of all, you probably saw this. My knees hurt. I don't understand. This one you might not be familiar with. This is sort of people use this as a sort of a jazz voicing. Yeah, John, it's really sad about Chris. I'm just devastated. I really am. So this is an interesting voicing. It's basically like this voicing, but it's not a bar chord. You're fretting with all your fingers. You're not playing a few of these strings. So I'm playing the E string, I'm playing the D string, I'm playing the G string, and I'm playing the B string. Sometimes. You don't even have to play the B string. But it allows you to choke it off a lot easier, and so you can have a smaller sound, which is nice. Okay, so that's one voicing. Another voicing that I used for the 4 chords was instead of this bar chord, right, or this, I used this. And you probably know this on a C chord, right? So it's basically if you just take a C chord. Hey, Jodix. Welcome. If you just take the C chord right here and you add the flatted 7th, which for B would be 2 frets down as B flat, right? C, B, B flat for a C chord. So I'm going to add a B flat. So I add it right here. In this voicing, that's where we add it. And that's another good one because all four strings are fretted so that, again, you can choke it off. So we can do that. So that's 2 more voicings, if you don't know those voicings, that you can use. And they're both movable because they're all fretted, right? Okay. Okay, so there's that. And this is a general rule. And I think you can just play, it's almost endless. You can sound like a lot better player if you just take your chords that you already know and you break them apart into a bunch of different pieces. So this is an example of that. If I can break it into this, well, what if I just played the middle 3? That gives me a slightly different sound, doesn't it? Or what if I played the top 4? That gives me a different sound too. So all these things can give me different sounds, and you can apply this to different chords. So that's one thing. You also heard, so it's a new voicing, you also heard the rhythm. So I'm not playing, I'm playing very sparse. One more thing I'm doing is I'm often playing what's called an approach chord. And this is the simplest thing that you can use to sound more sophisticated or more interesting. The absolute simplest. Take any voicing that you know, like for instance this one now. That's a G7 voicing. And instead of just getting in on the first beat, play right before the first beat, play a half step up or a half step down so that you hit this on the beat that you want. And you can do 2 half steps and move them up. Really simple to sound a lot more sophisticated. Now you heard me raking a little bit. That's just a little affectation. I don't know if I got it from Stevie, but there's a lot. I probably got it from Robin Ford, who also does that. I listened to a lot of Robin Ford when I was younger. So David, we're playing all 7th chords right now. We're playing all 7th chords. If you were listening, that's what we were talking about. We're playing all 7th chords right now. We haven't talked about creating any extensions, and we'll talk about that next. So far, this is all you, just playing with 7th chords will get you a tremendous ways, just playing 7th chords. And what I would say is, if you're going to learn one thing for the blues, do yourself a favor and learn as many 7th voicings as you can. And especially like taking the root off of it. So if you take the root off, there are tons and tons of 7th voicings that you can get. I'm just going to go through a few 7th voicings. So using this concept of, I take a basic chord that I already know, right? I know this 7th chord. I might even know this. I can create lots of different sounds by just using this chord and breaking it up in different ways. So here's one way. So instead of playing this, I might play this. Different sound, right? How about this? Different sound. Or how about this? Different sound. How about this? That's a different sound. Or this. All those give me a different sound. And so if I want to achieve a different sound, I can do that when I'm playing rhythm, or even when I'm playing lead too, but that's a different thing. Right? So that's a great way to do it. So if we do that, for example, and I'm not going to give you every voicing. We'll go over some voicings. Obviously, I can't give you every voicing because I don't know every voicing. I'm still learning, and it's fun to learn this stuff. So here's one right here I use a lot. It's just these middle 3. I use that a ton. No, yeah, you can wrap the thumb for the bass if you want. Doesn't change the voicing. I like to play it like this with my finger, but you can wrap the thumb. Sounds great. I like for minor 7th chords, I use it, but so that's that. Let me show you. So that was for this chord. Let's do for one more chord. Let's do this chord right here. For this chord right here, you've probably seen that. That's a 7th. Right there's a D 7th. Root is on the D string. So if we come up and bring that up here, we get a G 7th, right? Well, if I don't worry about playing the root, I get this, which is the top 3 strings. And you probably know that. right, so that's that seventh. But this is also, just by using the top three strings, there's no root in that. There's no G in that. But there's this too. I love this one. Right? If you're not familiar with that chord, it's either the red house chord or, if you're a Beatles fan, it's the get back chord if you're a Beatles fan. So just that little tiny chord, you can get two great different chords that sound totally different. To me, this sounds very different than this. That third in there versus that. It's neat. And you can do that with any shape you want. We could do it to this one. Here's another G up here, right? Same as this shape. These are all sevens, again, to forget the guy who David Sear was asking about it. These are all seven chords. So I could play a seven here. I could also play this seven. Different sounds. You know? So there's all sorts of things that we can do with this, and one of those is to find seventh chords all over the place. All right, now to David's question. Yeah, there's just so much. Like, you'll never run out of ideas. You'll never run out of new things to do. And that's, if you're either one or two people when you hear something like that. You're either one of the two people. The first person goes, oh my God, there's so much to know. I'll never know it all. I give up. That's the first person. The second person says, oh my God, there's so much I can know, and that's cool. Like, I get to learn new things all my life. Cool. This is awesome. So that's just by using those sevenths, right? And dang, I mean, we could even go to, like, what if I play this in a different inversion? I could come up with this, right? Do stuff like that, which sounds very jazzy. It almost sounds like I knew what I'm doing with jazz, right? That last didn't sound too jazzy, I suppose. I think you're right, Daniel. I think you're right. So let me show you a few of my favorite moves that do involve different chord voicings. So here are some chord voicings that I think you might find very helpful. So the first, and again, to David Sear's point, one of the first extensions that people do, once besides the seventh, is they'll do a ninth, right? So ninths are great chords. They sound a little bit jazzier. So instead of this, oh no, looks like this, I'll have to refresh that. I'm going to have to refresh my camera here. Hold on a second, folks. Oh no. Things are happening that are not fun. Let's see if I can wake it up. I have another camera, so I might have to switch it. Okay, I got it. I don't know how that happened. Camera just froze. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. Sorry about that. So one of the first things that we can do is instead of using that 7, we can use a 9th. So let me show you some 9ths. Now when I learned it, everybody knows this one, right? So we find the root on the 5th string, and instead of playing this C7, let's do it for C. Instead of playing the C7, which is a cool chord, we take this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? That's just an octave of the C, and we add a 9th to that C. A 9th is really the same as a 2, right? It's just up an octave. So we'll add this. So if you want to add this to this, well, I can't really lift up my first finger and put it there. Like, well, maybe I can. Oh my God, I can actually do that. That's sick. Maybe I should start playing jazz if I could do that. But anyway, we usually refinger it, right? Play it like this. And sometimes we even put the note on the E string. So everybody knows that one. Right? Everybody knows that 9th. But how about the one with the root here? Well, I learned it like this. It's a chord I almost never play. I'm playing the G, I'm blocking out the B, the A string, and then I'm playing. There's my 9th right there, the A, right? There's the 9th of G. But that is a not easy chord to finger. It can be done. So instead, what I do is I usually take the root out. I don't play the root. And I could play this. This chord has another name to it. This is also a B minor 7 flat 5 chord, but well, that's right, Lars. The bass will usually play the root. Or there's another thing is the bass will pivot around the root, and jazz players know this. When the bass is pivoting around the root, when you play rooted chords, it makes them sound bad. So it's something you actually don't want to do. It's actually a really good practice to play rootless chords. But anyway, or to play roots in the upper extension. But this avoids all the, there is a G right there. No, I'm sorry, there's no G, that's an F. What am I saying? There's a rootless chord. So you could play that. You could also add the root on top and play this. And that's a chord I like. I like that voicing a lot. That's, some people would say that's a Clapton hideaway chord. So Clapton used that in the Hideaway. So that's a favorite voicing of mine. Because it doesn't take up a lot of space. And you can even use this. Just those 3. It sounds great. That's right, Willie. T-Bone played this one. So all these things are things that you can do once you know them. So there's just different voicings. And finally, I'll just show you one more. There's a 13th. So I learned it like this. So it's very sophisticated sounding. So you've got this here, and then you can even play the top. There, I'm barring there. But there's another 13th that I love because it's very similar to a 6th, right? Or has that 6th sound. Because the 13th is really the 6th anyway, just like the 9th is really the 2. Another way of fingering this is this. And this is my favorite way of fingering this. This is a G13th. And here I'm playing, the bottom has an F, then I'm playing, so this is 8, 9, 9, 8. Very easy to finger that chord. And you can see it's got this little E minor triad in there. it's very similar to an E minor triad, isn't it? Anyway. So that's one thing we can do. We can add all those things. And finally, I want to say one more thing about what else we can do. We can subtract. So we can add extensions. We can also subtract notes from the chord itself. So even if we're taking 3, like say you really like the sound of this, oops, I'm sorry, the sound of this 9th, but you like the sound of the 7th too. We can kind of play both by just playing the top and the bottom and leaving that middle ambiguous. Instead of that or this, you play this. Right? It's even thinner. All right, anyway, so those, you can play double stops, right? Those are just triads. So those are some moves. One last thing is just it's a really good move, and it's a tried and true one, and you've heard me using it. It's this hammer-on to this little kernel, and I can either wrap it with a thumb and do this, or just play it alone. And then I can play a 9th on the C, but I just play the top 3. A 9th is interesting. It's actually very similar to a G minor 7, isn't it? Or G minor. G minor 7. There's a G minor 7 right there. Our C9 is very similar to a G minor 7. Interesting. So we can play, we're just playing the top 3. There's my D, D minor, or D9, right? G, C9. Now back to my G move. That's such a common move. All right, let's just play a little bit, and I'll try and incorporate some of these, and then maybe I'll demo it. And yeah. Yeah. Yep, Willie. Know those 7th chords. Know all those 7th inversions, as many as you can, right? Because every one that you learn, and it looks like again the bot went out. We're gonna try it one more time. Okay. Looks like it came back. Okay, so let's just try playing a few things here, and we'll just start from our basic shuffle. No, Keith, it's a little bit different. So in funk number 49, that right there, the beginning part, that's the same. But then he plays this. He goes to the he goes from a C to an F triad. Actually, I think he plays an A, so it'd be a D to a, I think it's an A. But anyway, this would be to a C to an F triad, a triad 1 to a 4 move, instead of to a 7th chord. He plays this. Different sound. Both cool. You can do either, right? If you want to sound like the Stones, you play. And if you want to sound a little bit sinister, you play the 7th. Although that sounds like Stray Cat Blues, doesn't it? I think Keith uses that chord in Stray Cat Blues. Cool. First chord is a 7th. The 3 chord is a minor 7th. No, not really. Not really. It's like a minor 7th. If we take a look at it, right? There's a major, right? There's my G major. And that's the 1 chord of a blues, of a G blues. The 2 chord is a C dominant chord, right? So we could play it as a C7, but we could play it as a C9. The point I'm trying to make is, once you start thinking about chords being just parts of chords, once you don't think that you have to play the whole chord, and this is a really key thing of thinking. Once you start thinking that you don't have to play the whole chord, you can play little pieces. Well, I'm going to just take that root off. Sorry, I don't mean any offense to anybody by taking that off. This is what I'm left with. Right? Now let me further take this note off. At this point, I cannot distinguish whether this is a G minor or a C9. They're both the same chord, right? From this perspective, when I'm just playing these 3. So in that way, it's like a G minor. The C9 functions similarly, slightly different, but similarly to a G minor chord. So have you ever heard anybody tell you when you're playing the blues, you could use a major G major pentatonic on the 1 chord, but when you get to the 4 chord, you better not use the major pentatonic. You got to go with the minor pentatonic. That's exactly what that's showing you. Yeah, because the 4 chord is very similar to the 1 chord minor, which is really a cool thing. There you go. All right, so let's just take it really simple, and then we'll just start adding a little bit things. Oh, I was talking to Lars. I was talking to Itzhak, answering his question. Okay, so we'll just start out by playing. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, so the thing that's interesting and that I need to get a lot better at, so hopefully anyway, you can take some of this stuff away and, you know, and get it. And hopefully you can, like I said, you can take some of this stuff away and I'm using a different camera now. No, I'm still using this camera? All right. I just changed it. Let me see if I can. There we go. People are talking about like not seeing the hand. So there's a different camera now. I have this and I have another thing over there. I have way too many cameras, I guess. Yeah. There's a few things that we can take away from this anyway. To just start out with a really simple boogie is really good, and to have a few licks. So if you all you've got right now is the really simple boogie, great. You know, pick up a few things that you can do as licks, like this one. Another thing you can do, like I said, another thing you might pick up is, oh, Mark told me about this thing about an approach chord. An approach chord is just something I can... It sounds like, what is it, Heartbreak Hotel? No, Jailhouse Rock. Right? But that's all the approach chord is. It's a chord of the same, well, in jazz it can be a little bit different thing, but it's a chord of the same flavor. So it's the same shape chord you're going to play, but you play it a half fret down, or a fret down, or a fret above. And it just gives some great... Just doing something like that makes things a lot more interesting and fun, because you're dancing a little bit more on the fretboard instead of just playing, you know, okay, now I static chords, right? You know, it sounds a little bit better, plus it's just more fun. If you can take away, hey, I just need to learn, or I want to learn a bunch of new voicings, one thing that you can do is, instead of like saying, oh, I want to learn 13ths, or I want to learn, you know, sharp 5, which is all cool, right? I'm not going to discourage you from that. You know, that's that sort of idea. That can be very powerful, right? Cool sounding. That can be cool sounding for sure, but one of the easiest things that you can do is to just say, okay, what chord forms do I already know? What big sort of block chords do I know? And then just figure out like every 3-chord combination, like this one. That's a great one. I play that all the time. It's like a Freddie Green chord. This one, that's a nice one. I will admit I don't play this too often, but that's a nice one. Here's a nice one. This is a nice one. Here's a nice one. Here's a nice one. Oops, that one stunk the way I played it. That's great. How about this? That sounds cool, right? How about this? Not so good. That's okay, but this one, it's great, right? Or how about this, you know? Or this? I like those ones without the third in them. They sound cool. I like that. And this one too. And that's with just like learning a bunch of voicings based on one. We got all that just from that one chord. Pretty neat. Pretty neat. And of course, you can do this with any chord you want. You can do it with a 9th, or you can do it with any bar chord. So I would say start out with the simple bar chords that you know. It's amazing what you'll find out. And then those become like your favorite chords for a while. I remember like for a while, I was using this everywhere. And it gets a little bit old once you're, using the same form, so you start thinking of other things like this one. That's a cool one, or, whatever. So, and then, of course, the extensions. You can take out some extensions. Like, if this was new to you, this ninth, and if this ninth was new to you, that's a lovely one, and it gives a nice contrast to this one. To me, it sounds a little bit different. That's another thing I like to do. Instead of doing an approach chord, I'll use a diminished chord of the same thing and then play the chord itself. So that's kind of a fun. So I play a G diminished and then the G9. G diminished. There's a G diminished. And then my G9. Kind of cool, right? All right. And then there's the various moves, right? If this is a move that you want to take away, or this one. Those are great ones to take away. This is a great one, the T-bone one, as Willie said. With or without the middle note. This is Stormy Monday too, right? Allman Brothers, Stormy Monday. Oh man, yes, lots of Joe Pass. If you listen to Joe Pass, I mean, I think he's the master of this sort of stuff. He could just sit down and play all this kind of stuff so easily. Just, again, I think it's just because he, once he got off the junk, he was at heart a blues player. I mean, he was at heart a real blues player, and he knew how to do all this stuff so well. And it just comes from, I think, a really simple way of thinking about things with Joe Pass. Anyway, that's it for today, folks. Yeah, for sure. That's it for today, folks. I just don't have the energy or the inclination to really kind of do too much like improvising and stuff today. I just, the loss of Chris just kind of devastated me. Yeah, I don't know what to say about it, but I really, love goes out to her family and friends. I don't really even know them. I knew her from the internet, and only kind of met her kids virtually a little bit. And yeah, I really feel a real loss. I really do. I mean, yeah, I really do. She used to call in on my radio show as well, which was great. And if you don't know about my radio show, by the way, it's at a very inconvenient time, 10 a.m. on Wednesdays, WICB.org. And WICB.org, and it's a blues show. It's all blues. So that's what. Thank you so much, Keith. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Trip. Yeah. Thanks. You bet. And thanks for everybody for coming on today. And if you like this sort of thing, let me know, because we'll do more. I like to play more examples usually, but this I just felt like, well, I was kind of on a roll showing a bunch of this stuff. Maybe we'll play more examples next time. I don't know. Well, definitely for the lead, we'll play more examples because it helps to have music around it. But yeah. Hey, and I want to remind you, if you are interested in the Blues Transformation Workshop, 30 days, 30 lessons, including listening and really getting to know some of these things much more intimately and working with them in an environment which involves, like I said, there's a course, but there's also a workshop component to it if you want. You can also purchase the workshop component to it. I'm limiting those seats, and that'll probably happen. It'll probably happen in the January timeframe, but I'm opening up the wait list right now. There's a wait list in the description of the video you can sign up to, and that's about it. I won't do a hard sell on that just because not in the mood. So anyway, yeah, R.I.P. to Chris. She was a wonderful person. She really was. She is really, you could tell she was a positive force for good. Yeah, and I am, oh, thanks, Lars. Awesome. And I am getting a little bit teary-eyed right now because she was a good friend. Yeah, she really was. And thanks to everybody on today. I'm going to say goodbye. We'll see you in a couple weeks where we're going to do basic. I don't know about basic. We're going to do blues soloing, but we'll start from the basic, and we'll start from the elements, which I think are only partly scales. Okay, only partly scales and chords and structures. A lot of the basics are really about time and getting the right timing in there, and all that. So we'll talk about the basics. I won't talk about it now. Thanks to everybody for signing on, especially thanks to my members who support me. Appreciate that. Itzik, I'll be coming down your way next weekend if you are around. I know it's Yom Kippur weekend, or it'll be Yom Kippur during that time, but if you are around, be great to grab a coffee. If you're still on, want to let you know. And thanks especially to Keith. Gave me a little tip. That's nice to get. So I always appreciate those little tips. By the way, Chris was really good about that too. I'll miss that. That's very minor compared to all the other stuff. All right, folks. See you. Have a great Sunday, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. If you're a member, we'll see you next Friday. Okay, and you'll see it in the email. All right. Take care, everybody. Yep, Charles. Hope to see you then.